Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disposable pecuniary interest and or other interests not already on their register of interests in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Have we received any declaration of interest in advance?
None received, Chair.
Do any other members have any interest to declare?
That's none, Chair.
Okay. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting. We've now have the minutes of our meeting held on Tuesday, the 20th of July, 2021. Are we happy that they are a correct record?
Move it, Chair.
So I have a mover and a seconder in that. So a mover is Peter Elliott, seconder is Councillor Armitage. All those in favour? That's everyone that was here. Yeah.
Everyone, Chair?
All those. Yeah, yeah. I was going to say, all those against, we haven't, yeah. So there's none against, but any abstentions? This is where the hands go up. Thank you. The motion has been carried. Main business of today.
Sorry, Chair, just for the record, that's Councillor Cooper, Councillor Foster, Councillor Hall and Councillor Hartshorn.
And Councillor Liggett.
And Councillor
Mr.
Liggett
Hancock.
and Councillor Hancock. Thank you, Chair.
Right, back to the main business today. That moves us on to today. We have 3 substantial items to consider. 2 items being TPO tree preservation orders and a reserved matters application for a single-storey dwelling. As you can see, each of these applications has its own report marked as agendas items 4 to 6. I am happy with this and intend to consider them in that order. Before we do, I would like the clerk to explain for the benefit of members, speakers and those watching on YouTube how we will deal with the applications.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the procedure for considering the applications at the meeting. We will consider the applications in the order that they are set out on the agenda. The Chair will introduce the application, then ask the planning officer to refer members to any late comments or updates received since the agenda was issued. The late items agenda supplement has been published on the Council's website and has been circulated to committee members. The planning officer will then give a brief presentation setting out the application plans and photographs from the site. The screen showing this presentation will share it with those officers attending the meeting remotely. They can also be seen on the Council's website through its YouTube channel. Following on from this, the Chair will ask each of the speakers, any objectors, then the applicant or their agent, to speak to the committee. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to put forward their views. There will be a reminder given by the clerk when 30 seconds remain. At the end of the speaker's 3 minutes, members of the committee will have an opportunity to ask the speaker questions, if necessary, to clarify any points they have made. When we have heard from all the speakers on an application, the Chair will open up the meeting for debate by the committee and determination by a vote. The votes will be taken by roll call. A note for the speakers. Once the application you have come to speak on has been dealt with, you may leave the chamber. If you choose to remain, then please note you'll be allowed to participate further in the meeting from that point onwards. You will be required to leave the chamber once the committee has decided on the application which you've came for, although you may watch the rest of the meeting on a screen elsewhere in the building if you so wish. As you're aware, this meeting is being recorded and will be placed on the Council's website. The Council will use the recording for the purposes of preparing the minutes. Please note, however, that others may also record the might also use this recording, which they obtain from the internet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We can move on to the first application. The application is to remove 2 beech, 1 willow tree and the pruning of 1 Norway maple tree covered by TPO preservation order number 280, amended title on the land at the Moor Road, Ashover. The application number is NED/21/00125/TPO Ashover. In line with our normal practice, I'm going to ask the planning officer, Alice Lockett, to tell us about any late comments, reports that have been produced, and to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans on the site. I will allow the officer to complete the presentation. I ask members to reserve any points of order or questions about the process until the end. There'll be plenty of time for your questions later on. Over to you, Alice. You're on mute, Alice.
Sorry, rookie error. Right, sorry. Thank you, Chair. May I first confirm that there are no late representations received for this application? This is a TPO application for the removal of 3 trees, 2 beech, 1 willow, and the carrying out of work to 1 tree, a maple, at the Bourne, Moor Road, Ashover. The curtilage of the Bourne can be seen outlined in orange on this plan. Sorry, outlined in black and highlighted in orange. I have outlined the 4 trees subject to this application in green on this plan. Members of Planning Committee attended a virtual site visit of the site yesterday, where we saw a range of photos of the site. The detailed arguments for each tree are outlined in the officer report. This is tree 1, a beech by the access gate. The proposal is for it to be felled. Officers consider that due to the age and condition of the tree, its lean and risk the highway and the neighbouring properties, and the damage it is causing to the boundary wall and the drains at the Bourne, that these factors outweigh its contribution to the amenity of the area. This is another photograph of it taken from inside the boundary of the Bourne. And that's just one taken a little bit further away. The next tree is tree 34, the willow. This is proposed to be felled. Officers consider that due to its condition, age, and the impact on the drains and foundations at the Bourne, these factors outweigh its contribution to the amenity of the area. I don't know, it's this tree, if you want to see it. That's just another view of it, and a view of it from the highway. It's this one here. Tree number 8 is a Norway maple. This is proposed to be pruned. Officers consider that the proposed work is acceptable and will not damage the tree's impact on the amenity of the area. That's a view of it taken from Marsh Green Lane. Last tree is tree 32, the beech, which is located down in the garden of the Bourne. This tree is proposed to be felled. However, officers consider that the applicant has not shown that this tree is impacting the drains and foundations of the Bourne, and therefore these factors do not outweigh its contribution to the amenity of the area. As such, it's considered inappropriate to fell the tree, but permission to carry out pruning work should be granted instead. It's just another photograph of it. In summary, officers have recommended part approval, part refusal of this decision, and for the following reasons. In the case of trees 134, their condition and the damage they are causing to the Bourne outweigh their contribution to the amenity of the area. In the case of tree 8, the work proposed is acceptable and will not impact its contribution to the amenity of the area. In the case of tree 31, it has not been shown that the work proposed is justified and the tree should be pruned rather than felled. That concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I believe we have 3 speakers on this application, and I will take them in order. The first speaker is an objector, Alistair Petrie. If you'd like to take at the table. You have 3 minutes when you're ready. Just press the button in front and it should come on red. There you go.
Good afternoon. The report before you proposes that the majestic beech in this application should be felled because it is damaging public utilities. None of the utility companies has submitted a report advising of a problem, and last month the planning department determined that an equally large tree standing in the road just 30 feet away should be retained. Why are the authorities' recommendations not consistent in this respect? The applicant demonstrates damage to a boundary wall, but that wall could be reconstructed either side of the tree or realigned behind it. Why is that option not being pursued? Tree roots have entered a drain on the property, and it is claimed that at their extremities, roots might damage foundations. The applicant accepts that in any event, the house needs to be underpinned and the drains replaced. And with modern materials and techniques, that work can be done in a manner which is entirely compatible with retaining the beech. Why should this magnificent specimen be sacrificed when other remedies are available? The applicant states that the tree is his property, but he has let it be known in the community that he does not own the boundary wall or the trees behind it. Which is correct? The tree is 150 years old, but beech trees have a typical lifespan of 250 years. There is no independent professional evidence that this tree is in poor health or that it is dangerous. Why cut its lifespan short, contrary to your environmental policies, when that act is avoidable? The beech should be retained, but if you were to permit its removal, why are you not able to recover to the public purse its lost amenity value, as do other authorities? Tree 8, the maple, stands on land for which there is sound evidence of it being public highway rather than private garden. What steps have you taken with the County Highway Department to verify the proper ownership of that strip of land and the ownership of the tree? Your case officer states that the maple is healthy and of a good shape. Why prune it? Why can it not be left in this rural setting to develop its natural form?
30 seconds remain.
Your Parks Department has no objection to a maximum 20% pruning of this tree, but your officer recommends a 1/3 crown reduction and a 20% pruning. This would remove most of the foliage from which much of the environmental benefit is gained. Why does your officer go well beyond the recommendation of the Parks Department? I submit that these matters have not been investigated adequately, that the removal of the beech and the pruning of T8 and T32 are not justified.
Excuse me, your 3 minutes are up now.
Restricted to the removal of just T34, the willow. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Petrie. My question is regarding the condition. It's in one of the reports by an Ashover tree warden that the tree is past its best. I've driven past and seen the tree myself. It looks in good condition as I've seen it, but I've only seen it at this time of year. And obviously trees change obviously throughout the year. I wondered if you could give us just your opinion, as I'm guessing you're local, Mr. Petrie, to it, your opinion on the condition of the tree throughout the year, please.
I would say it's a fine specimen. There's no obvious evidence of any significant sickness or defect or branches that are dying or losing their leaf cover. It appears to be in very good health. One of the things that surprises me is that the council doesn't feel it necessary to employ an independent arboriculturalist to form a view about these matters. It seems to me that relying on the arboriculturalist of the applicant is likely to lead to a biased view. But to answer your question, I see nothing about the tree that suggests it's sick in any way whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Petrie.
Councillor Armitage?
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about the maple being on the public highway, because according to the plan that we've been given, it's in the precinct of the building.
The map that is on the back of the officer's report from the Highway Authority is clearly their current map of the highway. However, these maps produced by the Highway Department have been done during the tenure of the highways by the County Council, and they were prepared without capturing the history of the creation of these roads. Originally, the roads were managed by the parish, and then the responsibility transferred to the Rural District Council, and only after that did it transfer to the County Council, and there was virtually no history transferred with it. So these maps tend to show what is on the ground, not necessarily what is technically the correct extent of the highway. Now, in respect of this, the part of Marsh Green Lane which bounds on the Bourne, it was set up under the Enclosure Act, which is very, very fully documented in the county archives, the county record office at Matlock. And it's very clear that it was set up as a 40-foot highway in perpetuity. And that obviously would have happened at that time, but at some time after it was set up, land has been taken back into the garden of the Bourne, such that the stretch of highway in question now in places is as little as 16 feet wide, rather than the 40 feet that it's its statutory width. Now, there is a process in law whereby you can enclose private land, and if it's not objected to after a period of time, you can acquire a legal right to it. But that doesn't exist with highways. Once a highway's been set up, putting a boundary around it, enclosing it in some way and trying to take it into private land has no legal validity. So there is a very wide strip of land within the grounds of the Bourne that is strictly still highway. And that includes the bit that the maple's on.
Councillor Liggett?
Good afternoon. There's a question about the beech tree. I noticed that obviously there's a slight lean on it. Am I thinking that that's prevailing westerly wind behind that? I'm just presuming that that lean has been there since it was a baby.
Yes, I've lived in Marsh Green Lane for 40 years now. The tree hasn't moved in 40 years. It's always had a lean like that. It's a very limited lean. It's a few degrees.
That's what I was just thinking, because obviously that's facing west, isn't it? So the prevailing wind probably just blew it slightly when it was a baby.
It could be the effect of the prevailing wind, or I don't know, but whatever has done it, it seems to be perfectly stable.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Elliott?
I'm looking at the tree, and I'd have to say it looks like it's got a significant lean. Would it, in your opinion, would it be better crowned or pollard than removed? Because that's always an option in my books.
I don't think it's necessary to do anything to it, quite honestly. I don't believe it is dangerous. Nobody's claimed that it's dangerous. It's stable. It's in good health. A lean of a few degrees on the tree is nothing. You see some trees that have tremendous lean on them, and they have the ability to withstand it.
I think the very fact that it's broken the wall and leaning towards the highway is significant as well. But on the, sorry, through the chair, could the wall be moved towards the highway a foot to rebuild it? Is that the Bourne's land, or is that the highway land? Would it narrow it anymore? Yeah,
I'm surprised. In the officer's report, she says it can't be, the wall couldn't be built outside the tree because the highway wouldn't accept a reduction in the width of the lane. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. But there's absolutely no reason why the wall couldn't be realigned behind the tree, or indeed it could just have a breach in it. It could be dismantled and built close up either side of the tree.
First couple of foot looking at it on the picture in front of it is only leaf, mould and bank anyway, so I'm sure they could actually build it 6, 8, 10 inches in to keep our heritage is. So
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? No, thank you.
Thank you.
And the next speaker we have is a supporter, Peter Brabbing. That's okay, take your time. Three minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, for affording me the opportunity to speak to the committee. I refer you to my letter to the planning officer, 2nd of March this year, which you will have seen and for more extensive detail. My sole focus is regarding this application with specific reference to the beech tree at the entrance to the Bourne on Moor Road, Ashover, which does present a danger to properties and to life and limb, and should, I believe, be removed on health and safety grounds. My house lies directly under that leaning tree. The following reasons: its condition. It is leaning approximately 30 degrees over the road and properties, mine, close by, driven by a southwesterly wind being supported by a 5-foot boundary wall. As the pressure of the wall increased over time, it split on one side of the tree from top to bottom, and this split has widened year on year. Worryingly now, a second crack has appeared the other side of the trunk of the tree, creating a slab of wall leaning with the tree and offering little support for the tree. Its size, it's a huge tree, gigantic, over 80 feet tall. Its age, well over 150 years of age and coming to its natural lifespan. Its position, overhanging Moor Road, a busy public road and adjacent properties. As I said, mine being the closest. All the walls of, and the wall of the houses, a post box close by, attracting people into the danger area. For these reasons, I believe it's critical health and safety issue that requires its urgent removal. On a personal level, my wife and I have lived in the house closest to the said tree for 43 years and have observed and monitored its decline. Quite frankly, the threat and worry that this tree has posed us has blighted our lives. My wife, now 83, will not sleep in the front master bedroom anymore because of the threat of the trees falling and demolishing the house. It has added to her depression. I understand those who object on ecological grounds and preservation issues, but it is my belief
30 seconds
that
remain.
the health and safety issue outweigh those considerations. I do support those such considerations, however, so that I will be willing to replace the said beech tree with 2 saplings in a more appropriate position. I believe that the committee has received the recommendation that that tree be removed on health and safety grounds. I respectfully urge the committee to endorse this recommendation. Thank you, Chair, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee, for your forbearance.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Oh, sorry.
No, thank you, Mr. Brabbing. We have one final speaker on this application, and that's the agent, Bill Anderson. Three minutes when you're ready, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. I didn't really have anything to say, but I thought I'd better address some of the objections. The problem with rebuilding a wall in close proximity to a tree is whether you can do it, a mature tree, is whether you can do it without damaging the roots. It would be ridiculous to rebuild a wall quite close by if the digging of the foundations led to damage to the roots, infection, decay, and then you got to remove it anyway. While I can't disagree that beech trees live for considerably longer than this one. Most beech trees don't live for even half this tree's lifespan. I reject any suggestion that it's only of average age. It's well above average age. The idea that somebody should be obliged to pay the amenity value of a tree to the local authority because it's had to be removed, I find it completely mystifying, and I disagree entirely. And really, I don't think I've got anything else to say, but if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to help.
Are there any questions? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. When it comes, we've heard quite a few times now about the age of beech trees.
Yeah.
And I know all beech trees are different. Some can die earlier, some can last longer. But when you look at how they're actually weighted, how they're rated by the Woodland Trust, 75 to 150 years is notable. Veteran is 125 to 200, and ancient is 225 years onwards. Now, we don't expect every tree to get to be an ancient tree at all, but this one is reckoned to be, in the officer's report, between 120 and 150. That only puts it just in the first that first portion, which is notable. So I suppose my question to you is, how old do you think the tree is, and what's your
Sorry.
Yeah, what's your take on its condition?
There's a Forestry Commission research note that works out the age of trees that are beyond, mature, and I worked it out as 150, and I think that's what Alice is referring to when she said that. Somebody else did it at 120. It could be anywhere. I would say that it would coincide with the age of the house, because it just seems to make sense. The Woodland Trust figures, while I don't doubt what they say about ancient and veteran trees and notable trees, most trees don't even meet notable. It's just a fact of life. It's just like, humans, sheep, anything else. Most trees just reach average, and the average is depressingly low or impressively low, whichever way you look at it.
I suppose what I'm trying to get at, Mr. Anderson, is that some trees do reach notable, some after that reach veteran and then ancient.
Yeah.
And it's about the condition of this tree. To me, it looks like it's, from what I've seen of it, and what I've asked one of the previous speakers, is that it looks like it, to me, it looks like it is notable and it could go further. It doesn't look like it's in poor condition.
We didn't say it was in poor condition, and, I would dispute that it's notable. I think you'll find a lot of beech trees similar to that one.
I'll finish on this last one. The notable is what's given by Woodland Trust. It's how they grade them. And
Yeah.
it's all about age.
Yeah.
So if it is 120 to 150, it puts it in notable.
Yeah, but there's a lot of trees that are notable around, then it's not that notable.
Okay, thank you.
You'll
I've
see
got
plenty
three
of-
speakers waiting. So Councillor Armitage, Councillor Ridgway, then Councillor Liggett. Councillor Armitage.
Thank you, Chair. You seem to speak with some knowledge of trees. Are you a qualified expert on trees?
I hold a professional diploma in arboriculture from the Royal Forestry Society.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Ridgway.
Yeah, do you have any idea how long the wall has been up? Because it sounds like the tree's been there longer than the wall.
I would, I don't know how you draw that conclusion. I would have said the wall was the same age as the house, wouldn't you?
I don't know, that's why I'm
I
asking
don't
the
know either.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Liggett, then Councillor Jones.
I'd like, if you can, to answer these many questions about ownership.
I can't. I know nothing. I assumed it was my client's tree. That's all I can say about it.
And also about the wall. I know it's not a dry stone wall, but surely it could be built back as a dry stone wall, so then the roots wouldn't be damaged at all.
I would have thought it still needed a foundation. And, it is, it's my experience that lots of efforts to build, I can't say lots because I don't see that many, but efforts to build close by mature trees are, it's always a toss-up whether you're going to win or not.
Well, I know dry stone walls definitely don't need a foundation, you just start at ground level.
Councillor Jones?
Yeah, about the wall again. It's difficult, as you say, because of foundations, but why can't the wall be terminated at each side of the tree? So the tree fills the gap. And apparently we were led to believe that it was on some kind of bank. But after looking at it, I believe it's actually going right down into the ground. It's not on a bank as such. So therefore, I don't see why they can't just take the wall that's falling down and make it each side.
I have no opinion on that. I'm sorry, I hadn't even considered it. I just thought that the wall wanted to be put back to where it belonged. You know, I have suggested to numerous highway authorities that they allow people to build their walls out into the road, and even when there is plenty of space, which there isn't here, then you know, the highway authority are invariably not in favour. And as I say, you could apply the principle of the root protection area, which, you know, if you follow the British standard for that, that's 5837 2012, then the root protection area for that tree would be a circle of 20 metres radius with the tree in the middle, and you shouldn't do any building work within that 20 metres. You know, we've stuck with the problem that we've no idea where that tree's grown its roots. We assume it's not doing much underneath the road, but the driveway to the bourne and everything else must have diverted root growth. We really haven't got a clue what might happen if we start trying to do any sort of wall foundations. And to say, I don't know about dry stone walls, not my field.
Councillor Leggett?
Just a question, we were led to believe that the roots of this tree are in the sewers.
Yes.
How do we know it's that tree? Because that garden is full of trees.
Again, I presume they've been identified, but usually it's the nearest.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Hancock?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, based on your qualification here, I'll be honest, I'm kind of losing confidence that we've actually got a definitive idea as to why this tree is particularly one that needs to be removed. So can you kind of reiterate for me why you think this actual tree needs to be taken out? Because I'm bordering massively on uncertainty here.
Well, no, I can't. You know, I mean, as I say, I don't think that you could seriously rebuild that wall to the standard that it was built before it was cracked by the tree without causing damage to the tree. The tree's already got 1 or 2 wounds on the trunk due to it rubbing against the wall. And I accept that this rubbing is microscopic, but nonetheless, it leads to wounds. And, you know, elderly trees, by definition, are less resistant to disease, infection and decay than a young tree. You know, if it was a young tree, then perhaps we just say, oh, dig the foundation, put the wall, and we'll see what happens. But, you know, at the end of it, it is not a tree with a long future life, almost certainly. And I think it would be a waste of time taking steps to try and preserve it when the chances of success, you know, any steps you did take, if, you know, they would be expensive. And throwing good money after bad just doesn't sound like a sensible option.
I mean, realistically, based on what we've heard, the chances are it's actually got a longer lifespan than any of us in this room. So
I wouldn't rely on that if I were you, young man.
So, well, no, this is the thing, because I mean, we're hearing that there is no kind of evidence of disease to it. There's a few cracks which we've been told which have got progressively worse, but I've seen trees that are pretty much hollowed out and still surviving quite well. So this is the bit I'm not kind of getting my head around as to why there's a recommendation beyond it purely being around this wall.
Well, one, those hollow trees, you won't find anybody who's going to guarantee that they're going to stand up. We know that they stand up for a long time. Equally, we know that some trees don't stand up despite being perfectly solid. You know, in this instance, there's a lot of disturbance going on around there. There's already excavations for the underpinning and drain repairs and everything, you know, you just have to consider what's likely to happen. I've been in this industry for 40 years now, and what you usually find with big mature beech trees is they'll get a fungus called Myripilus giganteus. You might have seen this. It's a massive fruiting body, and you'll find it at the bottom of elderly beech trees. And I mean, this decays roots. Usually the tree will start to die back. But, you know, lots of trees that I thought would see me out already haven't. I just wouldn't put money on any tree making it to veteran. You know, having made it to this age, I think is impressive.
But realistically, there's no evidence of anything of that nature.
Apart from a dirty great crack in the wall, there's nothing wrong with the tree.
Are there any further questions? Thank you. If you'd like to take your seat. You will now have the opportunity to put questions to the officer about this application. Again, I would like to keep this part of our proceedings focused on getting clarity about any of the points you're not sure of. Once we have done this, we can then have our discussion about the application based on all we have heard and read. I would be grateful if you could not move any motions at this stage. Let's wait until we have a chance to make our own assessments. Thank you. Are there any questions? Right. Councillor Elliott, then Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Chair.
Off you go, Alice.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. I couldn't hear
hear
anything. Sorry. I can't.
I'll try again, Alice. Is that better?
Oh, yes, that's much better. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Could you just
Sorry.
give us a bit of an idea? The officers that attended site, no, these are saying that it should be removed, but have they got the knowledge? Have we had an independent survey on it to say whether or not it needs to be removed? Because even the previous chap speaking was saying that it's the wall that's cracked and nothing to do with the tree.
So I visited the site, and Martin, who used to work in parks, visited the site. He's got a lot of experience in trees. He said he found some evidence of fissures and cavities in the top of the tree that haven't been mentioned by, they hadn't actually been mentioned in the report, but he spotted those. He considered, you know, the thing is that we're balancing the condition of the tree against the risk of the condition of the tree and its impact on the amenity of the area against the risk of its damaging the wall, the highway, the houses on the other side, and the drains at the Bourne. So you know, yeah, there appears to be, well, according to Martin, he was under the impression that there was some disease possibly or potential for disease in the tree, but also, you know, when you're looking at it in balanced against all those other things, that's what we were considering. Is that enough?
Yeah. Thanks, Alice. Yeah, it is enough, but I've got to say that a tree, and this has nothing to do with this application, but I'm just trying to make the equation. A tree in one of my local villages, they said, you know, 10 years ago, we should have fetched it down. The tree is still beautiful. The canopy is still fantastic every year.
Yeah,
it's still there, and it'll still be there when I'm long gone, I've no doubt.
I'm sure you're right, but we have to take each one on its merits, don't we? And balance that against the other factors, which is what we've done in our recommendation.
From a litigation perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Liggett.
Good afternoon, Alice. A question about ownership. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Question about ownership, that seems to keep coming up in what we're talking about. And also, just a comment, because I, like Councillor Elliott, do know that tree, and I walk past there's a footpath, and I go pretty regularly numerous times of the year. And I must admit, to say it's supposed to be dangerous, an awful lot of people park their cars on that road underneath that tree during storms and wind and all sorts that we've walked. They don't seem that concerned, or else I don't think they'd be parking there. But mainly it's about this ownership, because I don't really see how any of us can say anything if we don't know who owns it.
Well, I think we just have to, as with all planning applications, we take this on the merit, on what we're told by the applicant. The applicant stated he did own the trees in the application form. When we had the question from Mr. Petrie, we did question him about that, and he produced that map that's in your pack that shows what the boundaries of the highway are. As far as we're concerned, that's accepted, and that he does own the trees. I mean, if he's saying he doesn't, then that's a different situation. But as far as we're concerned, he does own the trees, and he does have the right to carry out the work to them. As it is with TPO applications, you can actually put in an application for work on a tree you don't own. However, you do have to tell us that, and you have to serve notice on the person who does own it. But in this case, the highways are happy about the boundaries of the Bourne.
The only other question I've got for you is the field maple. Can I ask why that's going to be pruned, or they're wanting to prune it?
I think they just are trying to start a programme of carrying out good maintenance to the trees at the Bourne. I think it's been said a number of times that the previous owner of the Bourne really didn't carry out any work. I think that's probably why we've got to a situation, particularly with the willow tree, that it's in not a very good condition. So as I understand it, they want to start a programme of just taking a little bit more responsibility for their trees. So this came in as part of this application. There's never been a question mark about felling this tree. It was only ever about carrying out some pruning work to it.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the report in the papers at 4.1 from the Ashover Tree Warden. Just a bit of clarity for me on this. As I read through this report, we make the assumption that number one beech tree is a tree that's past its best. It talks about the willow, probably not intended to be there. And then it talks about beech number 32 could be problematic. And then later on, a time to replace and change planting. And then further on at the end, but has passed the mark and it's time to grow something else. I'm concerned about how much weight here we put on this report. So my question really to officers, as well as the actual detail of itself, who is this Ashover Tree Warden? Who employs them? What organisation are they part of? Who appoints them? And I'm concerned about how much weight we give this as a committee. It's not like to me, it doesn't look like one of the usual tree reports we get from either a second requested tree report or one from our own tree department. So your opinion on that, please?
I actually don't know exactly. I believe that they are employed or connected to the parish council, but perhaps Councillor Armitage can confirm that. Is that right, Councillor Armitage?
No, I think it was in July last year that the tree group were sort of taken away from the parish council, and the parish council severed its tie to them.
Okay.
So that is as it is at the moment. As for qualifications, well, I'm not sure that the tree warden has any, but I know she's been on a course because she went on the same course as myself. But that's all I know.
As I understand it, tree wardens are volunteers who volunteer for the parishes that they live in to keep an eye on trees. They have, as Councillor Armitage says, some training, and they can report issues to trees to us or to the parish, but they're not necessarily tree experts. As far as we're concerned, we always consult a tree warden if there is one within the parish where the tree is situated. We took, I mean, obviously we take some notice of what they say. We don't completely disregard it, but we make sure that we've got the evidence from the experts as well, which in this case would be our own tree person and the survey from the applicant's qualified tree surgeon.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, perhaps when you've said that, not necessarily tree experts, perhaps then as a committee, we should consider how much weight we put on this report when we consider it, when we compare it to our own tree experts. So that's what I'm trying to get out. It's all in writing and it looks like it's a tree warden, and they might well have got a qualification or some education in it, but it's, for me, it's who regulates them, who appoints them, and what interest do they have. And it's that inclusion, that report within this that I'm concerned about. And if, like you say, they're not necessarily experts, tree experts, which you stated, that's my concern, not necessarily tree experts.
Yeah, but I haven't quoted them in my report, apart from within this section of the comments. So when it comes to quoting, making quotes about the tree, that's all been the stuff that our parks people sent to us. So I don't think I would quote the tree warden as evidence in that sense, if you see what I mean.
Thank you.
That's correct. If I could just add that what Alice is saying there is correct. I mean, the Ashover tree warden comments just need to be taken on face value. It is the council's parks department who are advising the local planning authority on this, and those are the consultation responses that we are relying on largely in making the recommendation that we are.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. It's just one, because we keep having the words potential and possible used an awful lot, but we've had contradictory accounts of the lean of this tree. What is the likelihood that it actually does present a genuine threat to the properties over the road?
It's a tall tree and it's leaning. With any tree, we have no guarantee that it's going to stay up. I mean, a tree, even a tree that's perfectly vertical, you can't guarantee that it's going to stay up. So it's always about risk and probability. I don't think I can tell you one way or the other, but if it does fall, I think it's got a good chance of causing damage to the properties over the road, or at the very least being, causing a lot of hassle on this to the highways. But I would think it would impact the properties as well. But like I say, we can't guarantee that it will stay up or that it will fall, but we've just got to balance the probability and the risk and the impact.
With respect, though, that's what I'm actually asking you to do, because we keep saying potential and possibility, but it's all very, very speculative. We're getting no kind of guides. I mean, the fact that we know is it's stood for at least 120 years. That angle has been there for a significant part of that. So I'm asking for context on that.
So as I've outlined in the report and explained, I think already, we're balancing the risks of if that tree does fall against the impact on the amenity and the likelihood of it falling. I would say personally, with some knowledge of trees, that a tree that's got a lean like that has probably, and of the age it is, and clearly that wall is moving, so that could have an impact on the roots, that there is a higher risk of it falling, but I couldn't tell you that it will or when it will. That's for, you know, that in my opinion, giving my advice to you, I think that the risk of it falling outweighs the and the risk to the other issues, to the drains, to the bourne itself, which is a heritage asset. I think that outweighs the impact of that tree on the amenity of the area. Now, you know, that's my officer opinion, and you are obviously able to disagree with that. That's what we're here for, if that's what you choose to do. But you know, the process that I've gone through has taken me to the conclusion that the felling of the tree is appropriate.
No, thank you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm simply asking for clarity so I can reach a decision. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
Okay, we're at the stage where I can open the floor to debate. This leads us to the final part of the process, and our discussion will be heard and that we think and want to decide. But before going any further, I would just like the clerk to remind us about motions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Please bear in mind, members, that a motion must be moved and seconded before a vote is taken. If an amendment to a motion is moved and seconded, then that amendment will be voted on first. If a motion is to be moved which goes against officer recommendations, then the member who has moved the motion must give the reasons for doing so. The reasons for moving a motion against officer recommendations should comprise the relevant planning issues and be supported by evidence as necessary. If a motion to reject officer recommendations falls, or in other words, it is not passed, that doesn't mean that the recommendations are automatically approved. Rather, you will need to take a positive decision through a further motion in favour of the recommendations or another course of action. This will need to be approved by the committee through another vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As the clerk's just reminded us, could you please refrain from moving any motions till everyone has had a chance to speak if they wish to, and I am going to now open the floor. Wow. Councillor Armitage, then Councillor Bow. Ooh, whoa.
Thank you, Councillor Armitage. I know that really you just want the last word. We've really been concentrating on one tree here, haven't we? Not the whole application. There is only one thing in my mind that has any value in terms of how I make a decision, and that is that the safety is of paramount importance. I think the safety of people far outweighs the amenity value of a tree. I think Councillor Hancock, whilst raising the question to the officer about clarity, you know, we are often, it's often said these days that because of say, climate change and whatever, things that are once in 100 or 200 years are now becoming almost regular. And I've got personal experience of a wall and a tree. To me, the wall is unsafe, and that could damage either people or property. And I think the tree is potentially unsafe, not just because of its 30-degree lean, but simply that its proximity to the highway. And I also am very persuaded by the argument of the person who lives opposite, And clearly it has affected his and his wife's life to a great degree, and which I sincerely regret. I would hate to be sitting here in a year or 5 years' time and to be told that this tree or this wall had fallen and we had taken the decision that, it'll be okay. So that's where I'm coming from. I am deeply, deeply concerned about safety. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Armitage.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, no one can predict if a tree is going to fall or not. And, this is obviously a difficult one. And this is one of the reasons why I asked for a committee to rule on it. As far as I'm concerned, the main tree is the willow, which has been allowed to get covered in ivy, like many of the trees around Ashover Road, and it's become choked. There's been little or no maintenance on any of the trees in the area. As regards the other beech tree, well, I can't see a problem with that. It's there. It's a long way from the house, so it can't possibly be causing any problem. There's been a lot of speculation about who owns the wall. Well, I spoke to Mr. Robinson, the owner, and he categorically told me he did not own the wall. It was still owned by the previous owners of the property. So on that, I would like it to be minuted that is what the gentleman said to me. The maple, well, we had Mr. Petrie tell you about it, whether they own it or not. As far as I'm concerned, if you go back to the Highway Act, and it should be, 40 feet wide, well, it certainly isn't there up to the wall edge, but we've got just the thing, the plan which has been given to us, which says that it is. Now, I'm of two minds. It doesn't need pruning, as far as I'm concerned. Let it grow as it wants. The thing which no one's mentioned about global warming. Now, these trees are doing quite a good job of offsetting this. This council has gone along with an emergency plan because of global warming. And it's no good felling trees left, right and centre, especially ones with TPOs on them. And as far as I'm concerned, the only tree that needs felling is the willow. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I actually do agree with Councillor Powell, and thank you to Alice for clarifying that last bit. It rips my heart out to even consider felling any, but I do have sufficient concerns over the safety of that one beech that I think perhaps it would be most appropriate in the circumstances. Likewise, I agree with Councillor Armitage over the willow. I don't think there's any justification at all to touch the other two in any way, shape or form. But I do have, Alice has convinced me, I'm sufficiently concerned about that beech by the wall that there is potential for an ongoing problem, and I think we would be remiss not to take action on that one, if I'm honest.
Councillor Elliott.
Completely agree with everything that's been said. I agree with Councillor Armitage. I'd hate to see it come down. I'm like you, David. I really am not for knocking anything down or trees down that need to come down, but I'm absolutely with Councillor Powell that if it's a safety issue and it's a safety issue for neighbours or the road or anybody around it, walking under it, cars parked under it, we just don't know. And I'm with you that I wouldn't want to sit here in 5 years' time and think we'd been remiss at not letting that come down. The willow is choked, I agree, that can come down. And 25% pollarding on the other beech on 34, again, can be done. And much as it hurts me to say the same as you, David, I think we do need to, if it can't be crowned and pollarded and brought down to a reasonable height, then it does need to come down. But I would like to say, if we do take that stance, you know, the government right now have got a policy on planting trees. I'd like to see some substantial trees put back in its place, not saplings. We've got to wait 150 years to see them grow and decide whether they're going to fall again.
Thank you. Councillor Ridgway, then Councillor Foster.
Yeah, Councillor Elliott just said everything. I was going to add, you know, we do need to, if we knock that tree down, that it is replaced with this 1 or 2 substantial mature trees. And again, looking at where it can't cause any damage. And I do think if the willow's coming down, maybe it could something else be put in its place somewhere else as well? Maybe another willow. We shouldn't just be chopping trees down willy-nilly, but I do agree on the safety aspect of things, but I am all for keeping the trees as long as we can.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. When it comes to beech tree number 1, I'm not convinced it is such a danger. There's a danger with any of those trees in high winds, with all trees, but I'm not convinced this is a specific danger. I don't think it's reached that level for me. There's cars around it, there's houses around it, and I do understand that. But it's a tree that Mr. Anderson said there's nothing wrong with the tree apart from the crack in the wall. You know, that wall's moved as the tree's grown. If it's not, and I've seen it, I've driven past it. If it is as it is, it doesn't look like a 30-degree lean at all. There's no 30 degrees there. You know, very few trees grow straight up. Very few trees do. Nearly all trees grow at an angle. And it looks like, unless somebody said this tree's leaning, I just assume that's a normal tree that's heading towards the sky at an angle, but like all trees. So I don't think it's a tree that's leaning. It's healthy. It doesn't look like it's coming down. It's like any tree that's near a property. To me, any other tree. If we look at where we live ourselves and think about trees that are around our own houses, you know, just because there's a slight lean on a tree, and you know, it doesn't mean it's coming down. But I do understand it from people that have spoken. I take the point that it is about balancing risk and reward, like everything else. But for me, that barrier is not being reached. It might have done for other people, but for my own, it's a tree that's standing up, it's healthy, it's strong, and it doesn't look like it's any particular danger to anyone. If we consider about chopping all trees down, they've got a slight lean on them throughout the whole district, you know. So that's my take on it. And I do understand the point made by Councillor Powell that it does come paramount health and safety must do. I do understand that, but for me, it's not reached that level for myself.
Councillor Liggett.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to agree with Councillor Foster. And also I'd like the committee to take into account, because it is relevant, what's happening with our other trees locally, the horse chestnut disease and the ash dieback. Because I think within 10 years, I think Derbyshire will be very lucky if we have either of those two. So we keep taking out extra trees that aren't diseased. I think it's going to be very sad. And I think if we do come to a conclusion that any of these trees has got to come out, particularly, obviously the willow is neither here nor there as it's been choked. But I do believe that we should ask for replacements. But I feel very strongly about taking out a tree that is still alive when there are so many of dying round us.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also a tad worried about, you know, the discussion about who owns the wall. So if you give them permission to take the tree down, who's going to repair that? Because an issue for me is not only the tree leaning, and I agree with what Mark's saying about the lean. An issue, just as big an issue, is the risk of the wall falling over. So if the tree does come down, who's going to repair the wall? We're going to have a decision on who owns it so as they can come and repair it. Can it, you know, can the footings, can it be dug out carefully and footings be put in over it and bridge it so as you don't ruin the tree and the tree can stay up? I think there's still plenty of questions to be asked. It's a difficult one.
Any other comment? Councillor Armitage?
Yeah, just to come back on the fact that what Peter Elliott said, there was a tree with a TPO on it on the other side of Marsh Lane, and a drain was laid. Well, it was within the root protection area, but it was it was that the pipes were put under the roots, because the roots were near the surface, and it was taken out very carefully. The enforcement officer was allowed to come and have a look. He had a look before and after, and he was okay with the way it had been done. And the tree is still standing. So as regards sort of cutting them to put a foundation in, well, it can be done without damaging the roots, as was shown earlier. And in fact, it was a drain that Mr. Petrie put in, and it was okayed by the enforcement officer, and it had been done correctly. If we go back to, we had a similar occurrence with a big tree in the cemetery. And what we did there, that was, you know, how do we do it? How do we do it without damaging the roots? Well, what we did, we cleaned the sides of the wall out, and we put a post and rail round it, and that sufficed. So it can be done.
Thank you. Councillor Hall, and then I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
Thank you. It seems that there's quite a bit of concern about the beech tree that's pushing the wall over. But sometimes in the past, we have had independent reports done before we do grant permission or anything like that. Is it a valid point to try and get one done this time, to say not adjourn, defer it until a report is done, maybe?
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to open for a motion. If anyone wants to, Councillor Ridgway, fingers poised.
Yes, I actually agree with Councillor Hall there. I think there's so many questions that need to be asked, like who owns the wall? If it's still the previous owner, then, you know, we need to get some clarification on that. And I think we need to have a proper independent review on this tree, on its health and everything, and what damage it could or couldn't cause. So I actually feel that we should be going for a deferment and bringing this back to the planning committee.
Thank you. Have I a seconder? Councillor Hancock and Councillor Hall. Show of hands, please.
Chair,
Sorry.
we would normally actually do this by roll call.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
So just to be clear, Chair, then the motion is that the application be deferred pending further information in terms of the ownership of the wall and surroundings, and also for a independent review of the tree to take place by an tree expert.
I think for the health of the tree and
for the health of the tree.
Yeah, and maybe getting the highways involved. I think we need to have a lot more information from a lot of different parties before we can sit and make a decision on this particular tree.
Sorry, Chair, through you, has the planning service any views on that or comments?
I'd just like to say that clearly, as far as an independent view in relation of the trees is concerned, the advice we get from the parks team is independent in as much as we are looking for independent advice. We're not looking for advice to direct a view one way or another. We're certainly looking at independent advice. And as we have seen in other cases recently, all the that is done that when we do go out to get further advice, once we have identified a consultant to come back and to give additional advice, we're pretty much tend to be agreeing with what our Parks Department team are able to advise us. So clearly it is the council's tree advisors who are giving us this advice, and that is independent. So we already have independent advice that is being used to advise you on the recommendation.
Did you hear that, Richard? Do we have any comments on the ownership regarding the wall?
Well, in relation to the ownership, clearly, as Alice has already advised, and as you know from the common way of dealing with planning applications, that we've been given advice about who owns what, and we take that on face value. Now, if there is a need that there's another owner that is identified further on down the line, then it is for the person carrying out the works to get the agreement of that owner. As a local planning authority, we have done what we need to do in terms of asking the question, and we have been given an answer. And that would usually be enough for us to proceed to make a decision.
Thank you. Councillor Foster, then Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to support the comments of our officer, Mr. Purcell. I've made this point before at committee. It's all well and good asking for, no disrespect, but it's all well and good asking for a second opinion or a professional report on trees, but we have that with our own Parks Department. And I've always been willing to trust our own workers. They're qualified, they know the job. And that's why very often the second opinion or professional opinion, as it's been called, will say the same thing. So I'd like to put faith in what our own officers have given us, and that's on the just solely on the tree report. I've made that point before. It's all in there in writing. We've even had reports from Mr. Anderson, which pretty much say the same thing. If a decision is difficult to make, and it is a difficult decision for a lot of us here, if it's difficult, we can't just push it onto one side. We have to make a decision. We owe it to people here to make that decision. If the only reason for me for deferring something, if it's extra advice, for example, if it's something to do with the wall, if we need to know who owns that wall, that I take, but not the actual point of we need another opinion on the trees, because we've got that from our own Parks Department. Thank you, Chair.
I was just going to ask Richard Purcell. Richard, could you tell me, the Parks Department, have they got arboricultural qualifications?
Well, they do have two specialist tree officers within the Parks Department. The people we're asking are not lawnmower operatives or something like that. They are people who are employed as tree officers within the Parks team. I can't quote to you their specific qualifications of each of them, but they are reliable and well-informed independent advisors that we do draw on regularly.
So you can't tell me that the chap that went out, I think he's retired, hasn't he now, but you can't tell me whether he's got arboricultural qualifications.
I don't know offhand exactly what qualifications he has. No, I don't. I can't tell you that.
Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up, because totally respect what Councillor Foster and Richard have said. I think that the key thing is we have got slightly different opinions here in terms of what's been said, because we've said there might be infection, there might be this. I think we just need clarification as to what the actual position is. So I'd be comfortable on that. Just.
Then Councillor.
Yeah, I'd just like to support what Councillor Foster says. My view is that it really worries me when we start to question the ability and competence of our own officers. We have done enough on this. If we defer it, we will have the same debate all over again, and I don't think it will make any difference to the final outcome. I have absolute confidence in our officers' ability to present us an accurate report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As regards this beech tree, you can't predict what it's going to do either way, and Councillor Powell is, I think, is quite right. It would be a shame to bring it down, we've got Mr. Brabbing, who's obviously having, well, he's not happy about the size of the tree. I was once at a game fair in Blenheim Park, and all the trees were oak trees, and they were all numbered, and the health and safety people had been round and inspected the trees, and also the arborologists, and they said, yeah, they're all okay. And these trees were inspected very frequently. And during the night of the show, one came down and it missed somebody's caravan by a few inches for no reason whatsoever. So it's a bit of a belt and braces job, but I think basically the safety of the tree is in question. And it's a brave man who can say this tree isn't going to come down. I wouldn't like to see it come down because it's been there for years. But also the wall's not safe as it is. So that needs to be seen. But, you know, hand on heart, you've got to think about this tree and if it comes down. And yeah, it's been there for all these years, whether it's outgrown its life or whatever, I don't know. But I don't really want to make a decision for it to stay there. I'm sorry, you know, my conscience is there. And I have all the sympathy for Peter Brabbing, who lives in the vicinity. And I know other people will be the same, but just ask yourself this, how would you feel? You know, we had a minute's silence for somebody, for some people at Killamar. Would you like a minute's silence for somebody killed by that tree when you'd made the decision? So, yes, they can replace it, and it may be a few years before it's in action, but, you know, hand on heart, make the decision and see what you think. We had an independent arborologist do, there was a similar argument about trees, if they're going to be felled or not. And it was at Ankerbold Road, if Councillor Hancock remembers. And we decided to, well, the planning officer wanted to fell them all with TPOs on them. And the independent chap came and gave his thing and said, well, some of them are and some of them aren't. And we ended up keeping so many, but there you are. I'll leave it up to you and your conscience. I prefer a belt and braces approach.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with Richard. So at the end of the day, we ask our own people who are
Councillor Cooper.
I've got to say that I agree with Councillor Armitage and Councillor Elliott. We've heard from Richard Purcell, Councillor Foster raised it. We've had the specialist report from our own staff. If we're not going to accept that, then why are we asking them in the first place? I'll leave it to that.
Well, we did have a motion put on the table and I didn't see a seconder. Was there a seconder? Was there?
Sorry, Chair,
did
as I
miss
had it, it was Councillor Ridgway and Hancock.
Oh, right, sorry, I beg your pardon. So.
And that's the only motion which is on the table at the moment. There
That we're
hasn't been
present
an
on.
amendment and it's not been withdrawn.
Vote on that one.
This was the motion to defer whilst further information was gathered.
Okay, so roll call.
Thank you, members.
So I'll now commence the roll call. If you could clearly say for, against or abstain on the motion to defer the application. Councillor Armitage,
Against.
Councillor Cooper,
Against.
Councillor Elliott,
Against.
Councillor Foster,
Against.
Councillor Hall,
For.
Councillor Hancock,
For.
Councillor Hartshorn,
Against.
Councillor Jones,
For.
Councillor Liggett,
Abstain.
Councillor Powell,
Against.
Councillor Ridgway,
For.
Councillor Rouse, and Councillor Ruff.
Against.
That's 5 votes for, 7 against with 1 abstention. So the motion falls, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to put a motion to the floor now, is that we actually accept the recommendation by our officers. Hand on heart, I know it's an extremely difficult decision for us all. But first and foremost, I don't want to be sitting here in 6 months, 6 years or whatever. But that's the motion I put on the floor. Is there a seconder? Thank you.
Chair, would you be open to an amendment? Because as I said, I'm comfortable dealing with the one beach that we all have reservations about in terms of that and the Willow, but I'm not comfortable about the pruning on the others.
I'm quite happy for them to be pruned. I've seen these
Right.
trees. Sorry, David.
No, that's fine.
I wanted to see as it stands.
Can we ask for a replacement for the?
Oh, that's part of the condition. Yeah.
And more if
Mm.
that's the chance.
That we can get. Yeah. Okay. So there we are.
So that's to approve officer recommendations with emphasis in the conditions that suitable replacement trees be put in their place.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yep, we can put in a management scheme.
So suitable replacement trees with a management scheme.
Yep.
Has that, did you get that, the planning service? Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. 3 you, I'll commence the vote. Councillor Armitage,
For.
Councillor Cooper,
For.
Councillor Elliott,
For.
Councillor Foster,
For.
Councillor Hall,
Against.
Councillor Hancock,
Against.
Councillor Hartshorn,
For.
Councillor Jones, Councillor Liggett,
For.
Councillor Powell,
For.
Councillor Ridgway,
I'm abstaining.
Councillor Rouse,
Abstain.
Councillor Ruff.
For.
Chair, that is 9 votes for, 2 against with 2 abstentions. The motion is carried.
Thank you. Thank you all. And it was a long, lengthy debate. Thank you all. And do we want a 5-minute recess before we start item 2? Thank you. And you may leave if you wish. Break. Right. We'll move on to the next application, which is 21/00380/RM. It's a reserved matters application for a single-storey dwelling with rooms in the roof pursuant to application affecting the setting of a listed building. I do believe this has been changed. There aren't bedrooms in the roof now. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. And I've put an update in the late reps.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on and we'll ask Alice to give us a presentation and any late rep information.
Oh, sorry. Hang on, I shall just have to. Sorry about this. Right, I'll just have to flick through. Right, thank you, Chair. May I direct members to late representations with regards to this application? You should have all the details in there. In terms of detailing, this is a reserved matters application for a single-storey dwelling at Cedar End, Wingerworth Hall Estate. In the case of the outline application, which was 18/00703/OL, to which this refers, the siting and access were not reserved, and the single-storey nature of the proposal was agreed by condition. The site is shown here outlined in orange, with the nearby listed buildings in blue. Members of the Planning Committee attended a virtual site visit of the site where we saw a range of photographs of the site. The following are some of the key slides. This slide shows the red line plan for the site as approved in the outline application. This slide shows the layout and the access as approved in the outline. And this slide shows that the proposed dwelling is sited as approved in the outline. These are the front and rear elevation drawings. Members will see that the proposed bungalow comprises 2 bedrooms with no rooms in the roof. The proposal is simple in design. Officers accept that the design is not perhaps that which would be expected from modern architecture today, but is heavily influenced by the restrictions of the outline permission, and its simplicity and lack of architectural features helps to ensure that it would not draw the eye from the listed building and therefore does not harm the setting of the listed building. This is the side elevation, which shows that the dwelling will be 6.25 metres in height and will have a roof pitch which is in proportion with the width of the building. Condition 7 of the outline application prevents any installation of dormer windows or other alterations to the roof without the applicant applying for planning permission. This is to protect the setting of the listed building. Following are key photographs taken from the committee site visit, which members attended yesterday. I've included these as a refresher. So this is the view from the site, from the siting of the house to the north. This is the view to the east, and you can see there Cedar End, the listed building itself. This is the view to the west. And this is the view to the south. There are no publicly accessible viewpoints looking into the site from any of the directions. Officers consider that the proposal is acceptable for the following reasons. The proposal is sited within the area approved by the outline. The proposal is single-storey as required by the outline permission. The proposal will not harm the setting of the listed building due to its simple design and modest size. The proposal will not impact the privacy or amenity of neighbours, as its location far from neighbouring properties and orientation looking away from neighbouring properties does not offer opportunities for overlooking. That concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I believe we have some speakers for this afternoon. The first speaker is the applicant, Mr. Armstrong. If you'd like to take a seat, Mr. Armstrong, and you have 3 minutes once you're ready. If you want to switch your microphone on, there's a little button in front of you. That's it.
Is that the one? Right, of 8 houses in our immediate vicinity, there has only been one objection. That from a person who was wishing to buy the land from us at a significant price. We have considered all points made and have tried to come to a satisfactory conclusion to suit all. As all permitted developments have been withdrawn, we are very aware of limited storage space, no garage or sheds or outbuildings, so therefore roof space would be a requirement. And as no one overlooks the property, I cannot see this as a problem. The design has been accepted by conservation and planning requirements. The landscaping will be a continuation of our garden at Cedar End and will include British species and wildflower section in keeping with the surrounding areas. As a landscape gardener, this is well within my remit. As a person who worked for the National Trust at several of their properties, I am well aware of the need to not intrude on the aspects of these buildings that exist. My wife has lived there for 60 years and is custodian of the history of the hall, having had all old photographs and documentation bequeathed to her by Mary Burton, former owner and historian. Both village schools bring groups of children here to see where the hall stood and the site of the hall gardens. They take all the information and photos with them to work on the history of Wingworth, thanks to my wife's help. The impact on our neighbour is as minimal as it can be anywhere. Noise will be kept to normal working hours while building is in process. The build does not overlook any property being screened by trees and shrubs. When Mary bequeathed us the land and house, it was because she knew we would make sure the house was looked after. 11 years after her death and now retired, we are making provision to continue her legacy to restore the estate house and generate funds to keep it as Mary would have wished. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Are there any questions? That's great. Thank you very much. And the second speaker is the agent, Stephen Bright.
Good
3
afternoon.
minutes.
Just like to run through the history of the application. The proposed development, which sits within the village envelopes, seeks reserved matters approval following the outline permission on 4th of December 2018 for a 2-bed, single-storey detached dwelling in the extensive grounds of Cedar End, Wingworth. The proposed dwelling is to be constructed from new or reclaimed natural stone to match the adjoining listed buildings and boundary walls, together with a natural slate roof. The applicant, Mr. Armstrong, is a retired builder and a landscape gardener and has many years' experience in working with natural stone for both clients, new and refurbishment projects, and also the National Trust. Consequently, whilst the proposal is deemed to be low-key and uninspiring by some, the finished product will sit comfortably within the site and will be of high-quality construction which respects the characteristics of the locality. The design philosophy has always been to construct a high-quality dwelling that appears to be a former stable block or an outbuilding that has been converted for residential use. The existing contours of the surrounding area and the proposed finished floor levels of the dwelling will not adversely impact on the setting of the surrounding listed buildings or the trees protected by the recent preservation order, and it will blend sensitively within the existing landscape. The proposed dwelling adjoins the extensive grounds of Cedar End, including the small copse of trees which have been protected by a recent preservation order, and the gardens of Cedar End are wonderfully landscaped and provide a haven for local wildlife. The proposed landscaping for the new dwelling submitted with the Reserve Matters application will complement this, and together with the existing retained protected mature trees will deliver a development that is fully sympathetic with the locality. As members will be aware, the original outline consent 18/00703/outline was approved under delegated powers, and the officer report stated at the time, I consider that a well-designed single-storey building with rooms in the roof space would preserve the setting of the nearby listed buildings, providing that there are no dormer windows included in the scheme when considered at the Reserve Matters stage, and would be in accordance with local plan policy BE9 of the North East Derbyshire local plan.
30 seconds remain.
However, following extensive discussions with the planning department, the elevations were withdrawn from the outline application and the Reserve Matters application revised to lower the ridge height and to delete the rooms in the roof. The proposal before committee is for a detached single-storey 2-bedroom dwelling. In conclusion, it is considered that the development meets local plan policy, preserves and has no detrimental impact on the setting of the nearby listed buildings, and also provides a satisfactory design solution which blends sensitively within the surroundings. We therefore support the officer recommendation and commend the proposal to the committee for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, thank you. Thank you very much. At this stage, are there any questions for the planning officer? No. As you know, we normally go on to the debate. I called this application in, there is history to it, but I must admit I am very pleased with what I've seen. The officers have worked hard to actually deliver a single story, 2-bedroomed modest dwelling. With that, I'm quite happy.
Thank you, Chair. I was round the back of there last week, strangely, and yeah, it looks fantastic. Or it will when it's actually built and it's in those surroundings. It's hidden. It's going to be a fabulous place to be.
So if there's no further, Councillor Cooper.
I can only add to what Councillor Elliott said there. I think as custodians, they're doing their utmost to uphold what's there and not try to compete with that. And that's exactly what the conservation officer said as well. So I'm fully supportive of this application.
So with that, if there's no further questions, comments, I will put a motion on that we accept this application by the officers. Thank you. Roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Armitage.
For.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Elliott. Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Hancock.
For.
Councillor Hartshorn.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Liggett.
For.
Councillor Powell. Councillor Ridgway.
For.
Councillor Rouse.
For.
Councillor Ruff.
For. Thank you. You may leave. And good luck.
So just to sort of be confirmed that the application has been approved.
Yes.
Okay.
Have we got? I haven't got anyone to speak. Okay. Right, final application for the afternoon, and that is for NED 21/00606/TPO. This is an application to fill one ash tree covered by a TPO, number 264 T1 at land between Priory Cottage and the southeast side of Amber Vale Flats, Small Road, Ashover, for Mr. D.A. Clapman, County Developments. Over to you, Alice.
I'm afraid you're muted, Alice.
I just remembered, thank you. Right. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Chair. May I first confirm that there are no late representations been received on this application. In terms of detailing, this is a TPO application to fell one ash tree at land between Priory Cottage and the southeast side of Amber Vale Flats, Moor Road, Ashover. The tree is located to the north of the site and its location is outlined in orange on this plan. Members attended a virtual site visit of the site where we saw a range of photographs. I've included some of them here as a refresher. This Google Street View image shows that the tree was part of a pair in 2009. However, its twin was already dead at the time and had been felled by the time the TPO was created. It is due to having grown so close to this twin that the tree is in the shape it is now. This is a view from Moor Road. The tree in question is this one here. The site has planning permission for 8 dwellings. The tree will be located within the garden of plot number 8. So it's here. This is the view of, this is a view of the tree from Moor Road, closer to Amber Vale Flats. So it's this tree in here. And this is a close-up of the tree. You can see here that it is lopsided and suffering from ash dieback. Officers are of the opinion that the proposed felling is acceptable as the tree's condition means it is no longer contributes to the amenity of the area and would pose a risk to the occupiers of the house to be built close by. A replacement tree in the form of a standard beech has been conditioned and agreed by the applicant. I think having the conversations that we've had earlier, I think, you know, if this tree was still out in the field, then it wouldn't be an issue and we wouldn't want to fell it. But because the houses are going to be built close to it, then it does become a safety issue. That concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've no speakers on this application, so we'll go to questions to the officer. Councillor Ridgway.
You're saying that if this tree was in a field, then we wouldn't consider knocking it down. But yet again, planners, somebody wants to build a house or houses, so the poor trees have to suffer and be chopped down. I don't understand it. I mean, can you give me a reason as to, you know, why you agree that a tree should be knocked down so that houses can be built? The tree was there.
I don't. Like I say, if that field was still a field, this tree wouldn't have even come. They wouldn't have even applied, would they? But because the tree is now no longer a field, the site has been approved for planning for houses. We do have to consider it in, you know, in the context of it being going to be in a garden, and that in that case, the owners of that garden will at some point, if it hasn't already died by the time the house is built, will come in to remove it. So it's the balance, the consideration made is balancing that safety of those people and that house against the condition of the tree and the possibilities of getting a new tree planted now so that it's got a good chance to get growing and be a decent size once that house is built and people move into it, or waiting until it dies and then they'll be able to take it down anyway. So
how do you know the person in the garden that buys that house doesn't want that ash tree there anyway?
Well, they might do, but I think
again we're here making assumptions, aren't we? Could be, couldn't be. I just think, again, you know, we've had a long debate about trees, and my biggest concern, which I brought up to this council before, is that we allow, you know, trees to be chopped down willy-nilly so that houses can be built. And I'm sorry, it just doesn't sit comfortable with me, that.
Could I add, Chair, that I mean, just as a sort of another way of presenting that an answer to that same point, if you can see that the tree is struggling, all the other trees around it are in full leaf, but this one is really struggling, and that is a sure sign of the ash dieback that it's having. If there were no houses being built nearby, then this tree would just die off and eventually fall down safely in a field. But the application is now to take the tree down in a safe manner, so that when there are houses nearby, it's not just going to fall down and land on a house or land on people in the garden. So that's the reason why there's a difference between what the situation is now and if there were no houses being built there as the situation is.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just for the record, this council doesn't allow trees to be cut down willy-nilly. The officers don't, and this committee doesn't. So that's for the record.
Thank you, and I agree wholeheartedly with you. But I would like to point out too, in our papers, page 53, it does clearly state the scheme of replacement and that these trees will be replaced with mature trees. So hopefully we will take that into consideration as well. They're not just being cut down. I've seen this tree. It is suffering greatly from ash dieback. The last thing we want is for it to spread. So unfortunately, I have to support the officers. But moving on, Councillor Armitage, then Councillor Jones.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I had a look at this tree yesterday. I'd seen it previously, but it's definitely got ash dieback. It will spread. It's throughout the village. There are many trees that have now got it. I cannot see that, I think 6 months' time, that tree could be completely dead. That's the rate at which it's spreading. I agree with Mark Foster. We don't cut them down willy-nilly, but they are diseased, and as such, it should be taken down and a new tree put there of reasonable size, not a sapling, and with a management plan, as we did in the last one. And these should be adhered to. I don't like seeing trees cut down. They take a long time to grow, but on this occasion, it's there. And one of the worst things you can do is try and fell a tree that's dead. I've done it myself, and I was lucky to get away with my life, because what they do, they tend to snap off halfway up and drop on you. And I've been just missed by one. So that's my personal view. Cut it down and replace it with a decent tree, not a sapling.
Any other comments? Councillor Elliott? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, this one's a bit easier for me, Chair, because it is actually suffering with disease. I don't have any issue. And if you read through the bump, then it does say they will replace it with mature trees, not one tree. So no issue with that. And it does say that they will let us know the size and the type and the species and so on before they do that. So I have no issue with this one. Thank you.
What I'm concerned about is what can they replace it with? And they're saying it's going to be a beech. We've seen the size that beeches grow to. So in 10, 15, 20 years, somebody will be wanting to cut that down because it's in a garden and it's too big and it's overshadowing the house. I think we need to look at what it's replaced with, that they're going to be a proper size and that there's going to be enough to replace that plant, that tree, for as regards to its use in the planet conservation stuff. I'm just not happy about us cutting trees down. I do know this is diseased, I accept that, but I just think it's stupid to put something in that's going to end up having the same conversation about in 10 years' time when it's overgrown where it is.
Councillor Elliott?
Chair, as I said, if you read the literature on it, it does say that they are putting the one standard beech back, but they are also putting mature trees back of different varieties as well. So, and they're going to come to us with that before they fell this one. So maybe if you want to stipulate what you want in there, they I assume will put in native trees.
Yeah, it's just that I know about beech trees. I've got them right near my house and they're huge and they're beautiful. And they have, birds and everything about them. I really appreciate them. And I know this ash tree is dying and I can see that it should be taken down. But in your own garden, you wouldn't want a beech the size of the ones that grow near me. And I just think in time, people will be saying, oh, it's overshadowing our house and it's doing this, that and the other. It's breaking our patio up and everything. And I think we should look at what we plant there so it's appropriate. And if you're going to plant more trees, fair enough.
I agree, but that's something to manage.
And it's quite clearly stipulated on page 53 again, what they're going to be doing and not doing. So I'm quite happy with what's actually proposed. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me, Chair, I'm not sure which part of the agenda we're at here. Are we able to put motions forward yet? Are we at that position yet?
Unless anyone's got any other questions to the officer, I'm quite happy to do that because I think we've spent long enough here dealing.
I propose that we go with the officer's recommendations on this.
Thank you. Roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Armitage.
For.
Councillor Cooper. For. Councillor Elliott. For. Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Hancock.
For.
Councillor Hartshorn.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Liggett.
For.
Councillor Powell. For. Councillor Ridgway.
4.
Councillor Rouse
4.
and Councillor Ruff.
4.
Carried, Chair.
Okay, brings us on to item 8, planning appeals lodged and determined. Richard, are you going to lead on this?
Well, all I've got to say really is that you've got the report. There are a couple of appeal decisions that we've had in. You've already had the actual decision letters sent to you. If you have any questions, well, happy to ask, but they're fairly minor applications, and if you've had enough of talking about trees, then you might want to pass over the one from Holymore side. But if you're on a roll and want to talk about that as well, then happy to have that discussion. The other one is in relation to just house extensions up at Calo.
Are there any questions for Richard? Thank you. Everyone happy with that? Right, thank you. And the last item, matters of urgency. I have got absolutely no matters. Right, starting blocks, you're all off. Thank you all very much.